There's some quote from them about the track, Baby, where I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was Donnie, but he's like, yeah, I wrote that when I was in high school, and I thought that, like, high school sweethearts were, like, a real thing. As if you found out later that it, like, wasn't a real thing.
Donnie. Well, of course, he went back to the farm.
I feel like we've all been there, though, you know?
Oh, we've all been there.
Undercover.
Welcome to Undercover. In this episode, indie rock group Hippo Campus sit down to speak about their weird and wonderful journey, discovering and covering Baby by Donnie and Joe Emerson, recorded at Spotify Studios in New York City.
Zach and I were in a cover band growing up from the ages of like 13 to, honestly, I think it was 18. It was probably a bit too long.
Honestly, it was like a little earlier than that, like 11 to 18.
Something like that. But we played like 80s classic rock covers, so I think Zach and I have been a bit traumatized from that, so we've been reluctant to want to bring that element into what we're doing in Hippo Campus. But when we do cover songs in Hippo Campus, it's always fun.
Yeah, I don't think we've almost ever performed one live. Maybe once or twice. I remember.
We did that one session for the AV Club.
True.
Where we did Don't Bring Me Down.
Right.
By ELO.
We performed one cover live in London with Low, last snowstorm of the year.
Oh, true.
But I think Nathan's been a big proponent of like, let's cover a song, guys. And I was, we were always like, no. I'm like, no, it's a trigger for us. Like, we're going to start crying and it's going to be a whole thing.
The sets we used to play were like 3 hours long to nobody in bars as children.
I always had seen bands, they have sets and they, more often than not, like a younger band would have a cover song in there or something, maybe to fill the set or maybe because they just really wanted to play the cover. And I always jumped to the fact that it was like, because they're just filling time. And I was just like, we have to have our own stuff. Like, we just have to do us. If we do covers, then we're not being as original as possible. But that was like my angsty thought process about it when I had to fight Nathan against it.
You're ignorant, bro.
That's what it was, ignorance.
100%.
I think it's reinvention for me when a band is able to take a song and make it their own. I think that's the most important thing of covering songs. I hate it when bands like try and go as closely to the original as possible.
I think as an artist and being in a band, the headspace and perspective that you have to have when covering a song is that you're not covering a song. I mean, look at jazz, like it's all, like all the standards. Are those all, that's all you're just covering standards or whatever? And it's amazing. Like it's not a box, it's another opportunity. It's another way to exercise some creative talent. I think that having that kind of fearlessness about covers is what makes covers good. In this day and age, you can find a new cover of a Drake song like every other day. And
the Paramore cover of Passion Fruit, honestly, this is sublime. Jeff Buckley's cover of Hallelujah is what made the song Hallelujah, right? So it was a cover, but it totally elevated the original as well. And I don't know what about Jeff Buckley's version. He stripped it back. He made it his own in a sense, but it was still like it had all the parts of the normal song. I think a good cover highlights what's good about the original, but then maybe frames it in a new light that can make you appreciate it more deeply or something.
The story of this song for us, we watched this movie, Zach and I watched this movie actually originally, and it was really dramatic for me. I was really emotionally involved in the movie, and I showed it to Zach. I was like, hey, check out this movie, we should watch it together. And he's like, first couple scenes, he's like, that's Tim and Eric. And I was like, oh, Tim and Eric, the comedy duo. I wasn't allowed to watch them growing up. And the first track in that movie, the comedy, is this song, Baby, by Donnie and Joe Emerson.
When we're out in the moonlight, looking up all the stars above.
The whole
soundtrack really was
flooring. It was a
soundtrack to like the time that we were living. It's just a big collection of different tracks, like Gardens and Views on there, and Gangs is on there. A lot of good songs. William Basinski's on there. I think they were mocking like the hipster scene in Brooklyn, actually, like Williamsburg. That's like the premise of the movie. I don't know, the whole soundtrack just became so nostalgic, and it has been for years.
But Baby kind of like took itself out of that context. For me, it was just like, I love this song so much, and I listened to it so frequently after that point. It just kind of became like one of my favorite songs ever. And then obviously like everybody started listening to it. And then that was like a couple years ago. And then when we got, the idea to do that song, a couple of us were like, yes, like let's go. And a couple of us weren't so excited about it.
I heard the song for the first time last week. Highest key.
I was generalizing. My apologies. when we're in a studio, and it depends which studio, we either have that energy off the bat where it's like, yeah, we got this. We got this song. We have some ideas. Or it's just, what are we doing right now? This is insane. I'm going to die of frustration. But, the vibe of the studio is super important. The songs that you're planning on recording definitely influence the way that you feel. And it's just kind of how creative you feel in the moment.
There's a lot of subtle opportunities to either screw everything up or like make everything work as it should. And it's just such a fine line sometimes, but that's why it's fun, right?
Yeah, it's cool when we get to do this live tracking too. We haven't done that in a while, and when we get a chance to do that, I don't know, it always reminds me that it just feels so good to do that in a studio setting too, because everything sounds awesome and it's just so easy to vibe out in that way. But I also think the studio tends to bring out the slight perfectionist in all of us and whatnot, and we can go forever on specific details and crazy things.
It's hard to know sometimes which songs call for what instruments, but that's the point of the studio too, that there's amazing tools at your disposal. And again, just finding the right one and then making it work to your advantage. And it's really exciting to be able to learn about like a space by playing music in it, and doing that with a bunch of different instruments is really rewarding.
The way I like to think about it is like, you got your main characters, right? You got your guitars, your drums, piano, and then you got the auxiliaries, like the second tier characters, which are not like, they could just be forgotten about, but sometimes they make the song. What are they called? The hitty sticks.
A cowbell?
Claves. Cowbell's close. Hitty bell.
Cowbell might be a third tier character.
Cowbell, are you kidding me? It's a first tier character in some playbooks.
Blue Oyster Cult, dude? Come on.
We started working on this song at sound checks on this tour, really flying blind. The song's 2 chords, so it's pretty easy to get the general idea down. And we kept just saying like, oh, we'll just wait until the studio to figure that part out. And we got here and everything was set up very nicely, and it was like, all right, let's get to work. We tracked drums and bass and the Wurlitzer live, and then that was kind of like the foundation for the track. And then we just kept on building on top of that.
Ooh, baby. You're so baby.
The lineup we went in with is a little different than our live show. Typically, like Zach will play bass or DeCarlo will play bass. But for this one, I played bass and Zach was on keys, Nathan on guitar, and Whistler on brushes. It was fun. It was fresh.
Yeah, I really didn't expect it to go as well as it did.
Yeah.
Like the times that we ran it in soundcheck, I was like,
yikes.
Whew. Like being such a lover of the song, I was like, please, can we not disrespect it? Like, I just really want this to go well. And it turned out way better than I hoped.
We were really, really hoping that the studio would make it something magical.
Definitely biting our nails until today. During sound checks, we noticed that the primary elements of the song were the keys part and these eerie harmonies that were just singing the ooh, ooh, baby. And so we tried to nail that, and then from there on guitar, like, we got this really dreamy slide sound. We just kept going in that direction. Jake's vocals were really you only did a couple takes, really.
Yeah, I think it was the second or third take, which is rare. Typically, I like to go into tracking vocals and be very like nitpicky with it. But for this particular song, it felt best to kind of keep it loose and vibey.
Dreams of you are left time.
But yeah, a lot of great equipment. We used a red top whirly. What's your guitar called again?
Oh, we had this Gibson 335 that I want to buy.
Wink, wink.
I used a Fender, is that a P-bass?
Yeah, it's a 70s P-bass. Just sounds so good.
Yeah, it was real nice, real thumpy.
Flip top right there was really putting in the work, though.
Yeah, the B15, is that? Or wait, that would be the cab. I'm not so well versed in the equipment world, but...
Whistler played the drums.
I put
You slapped the dubs.
snare and a
Slapped the
hi-hat and
dubs.
a kick drum.
It was cool, but I was like trying to figure out how to make it even longer, and so I had this delay on. Then there was this solo in the middle of the song that we weren't really sure if we wanted to put in there, but I ripped it. We were running through this really crazy, weird, I think it's a Russian amp. German, he said.
German Dynacord.
Dynacord hi-fi, and it just made it super shitty and great. And I have this jam fuzz pedal that's pretty sick as well.
I played a lot of flugelhorn on the joint. When we started working on it in sound checks, at first I was just kind of doubling the harmonies, as that tends to be the role I fit into in this group. I think after about like 2 days of playing it, I got kind of sick of just playing the harmonies with them. And so I thought of just kind of thickening it up by like putting a big fat 5 down there at the bottom of my register and kind of just like going back in between the 5 and the 1 over and over again. It kind of doubles up the harmonies, but it mostly just kind of adds more emphasis to what everyone else is singing.
Listen, baby.
There seems to be some disagreement online as to whether it's You're So Baby or
Yes, oh baby.
Yes, Oh Baby.
Yes, oh baby.
So I was kind of doing a mix of both of them because, you know, it's good to compromise sometimes.
It's music, you can't tell. The hardest thing was the tempo.
The tempo.
We were trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a slow joint.
I think we even played it slower than the actual recording, too.
Oh, we did play it slower?
I think. I'm pretty sure. Only a couple BPM, but...
We just wanted to really... We just were picking it up instead of setting it down. That was probably the hardest bit. Everything else was easy, breezy.
Cover girl.
Dreaming wild.
To hear Hippo Campus cover Baby by Donnie and Joe Emerson, head over to the complete Spotify singles playlist, now streaming only on Spotify.
Undercover.